Okay. Good? All right. This is Inside with Outsiders. My name is Jeremy Asgari, and happy Mother's Day. Today, it's only fitting that we have my mom I'm interviewing here, Jackie Bruce. Thank you for being here, Mom.
I'm happy to be here.
This is the most interesting interview we've done yet.
You don't know yet what I'm going to say.
That's what I'm worried about.
Oh, yes. I think you should be a little worried.
I am a lot of worried. Not at all.
No,
I think
she told me what she was going to be saying, so you should be a lot worried. We had this conversation like
Yes.
a couple weeks back.
Yes.
Well, that's a wrap then. Thank you for listening. Well, the reason why I wanted you on this, other than the fact that I think your story is interesting, is it's something for me to look back on forever. I get to know your story
that's true.
and have it on video. Plus, I think it's also interesting and maybe inspiring for people to watch your story on our podcast. So, if you're ready, we'll get right into it.
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. Well, I always ask people where they're from, and we start from there, and we kind of discuss the events that have taken place in their life, which have led them to where they are now. So let's start with where you're from.
Okay, so if you mean by that, where was I born? I was born in Nottingham, England, but I'm actually French. I consider myself French. My mom is French, and I was raised in France, and my father was American, and most of my life now has been spent in America. Mm-hmm. So I guess I consider myself a little bit of all those things.
Right. And where in France are we from? I already know these.
Okay.
It's weird to ask these questions because I know them, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, on my mother's side, my mom is French. Everybody comes from Normandy, the north of France. In fact, my grandparents, both my grandmother and my grandfather, were both from Normandy. Mm-hmm. So we're from the north.
I know a lot of our family is in kind of all throughout France on Mammy's side. Mammy's how you say grandmother in French.
Yep.
But originally from Normandy, a lot of them are in Paris and spread apart. When did that disbursement from Normandy start?
I would say at my grandmother's generation, where they started moving away from Normandy. I mean, it sort of makes sense. People became more mobile, you know. And I believe my mom was actually born in Paris.
Oh, she was?
Even though I believe she was born in Paris. Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Whereas my grandmother was born in Normandy and my grandfather as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I had no idea she was born in Paris.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you were born in Nottingham?
Yeah.
How long from Nottingham, how did you end up in Paris? Like, I know you moved around a lot.
Story.
Yeah, but we're here for the story.
Yeah,
and I know kind of why you moved around so much. But
So I was born in Nottingham. I don't know how long my parents lived there, but a few months. But ultimately, we then moved, not back to Paris. We then moved around. I believe we went to Greece at some point. And I'm not sure exactly all the trips we took before we got to Greece, because my sister Dottie, your aunt, was born in Athens. But we lived in Austria. We lived in Italy, in Trieste. We lived in right outside of Zurich in Switzerland. And I think around the time that I was about 3 years old, and so my sister would have been about a little bit over a year, we moved back to Paris. And that's where we stayed, and I grew up in Paris at that point.
But there's a piece here that we haven't discussed was my grandfather, your father's side. He wasn't French, he was American.
Yes.
But he wasn't allowed in France, is that correct? Or what was his background first off?
Okay, so my grandfather, my father was biracial. My great-grandfather, so his grandfather, your great-great, was Blanche Kelso Bruce, who was the first black senator to be nominated to Congress representing the state of Mississippi. Mm-hmm. And he was actually the first one elected to Congress. The black senator prior to him, who actually was in Congress, had finished off the term of a senator who had passed away or who had left. But he was the first to be, elected to Congress.
Okay.
So anyway, to make a long story short, our family really was in Washington, D.C., although my father was born in Tuskegee, Alabama, because my grandmother, or my great-grandmother, became lady principal of the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama.
The Tuskegee Institute,
which is a program school for I guess black people, as they were called back at that time. a school. She was
Yeah.
lady principal of the school.
I mean, when I think of Tuskegee, I think of the famous Tuskegee
The airmen.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Interestingly, there were quite a few of them in New York City Transit when I was working as bus drivers.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
like they were
Yeah.
actually airmen.
They were airmen. In fact, we have one bus garage named after Tuskegee
Oh, wow.
Airmen. Yeah.
That's interesting. So
Yeah.
that was his background. So what about him specifically?
Okay, him specifically, he actually he met my mom in France. They met in France. I believe, so let's backtrack a little bit. So he went to Phillips of Exeter for school, and then he got into Harvard. The problem is they would not let him dorm. He was there only for a year because since he was colored, he was not allowed to be in the dorms. So he did 1 year there, and then he left Harvard and continued his education. But the one thing is he learned French thoroughly. He was almost a native speaker. I remember when I was growing up, my parents only spoke French with each other. I didn't speak English because, and if you hadn't looked at him, because he was very, very tall, and he looked American, right? Because he was tall and broad. French people are not like that.
Yeah.
But if you didn't see him and just heard him, you'd think he was a Frenchman
Really,
speaking.
no accent.
No accent whatsoever.
Do you know when and how he learned?
I really don't know. I'm not sure. I do know, though, that he was married before marrying my mom, and he had met that wife because he was tutoring her in French.
Oh,
So I'm not exactly sure, but I know in college,
Yeah.
he traveled a lot. He did speak some Spanish. He traveled a lot. So he enjoyed traveling.
I wonder where I get it from.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's where you get it from.
Yeah.
And me too, because I like
Yeah.
to travel. So, yeah. So anyway.
So then, so he ends up marrying Mammy. You guys end up in Paris. Is he in Paris with you?
I don't remember ever living with my father, actually. We were in France when we were very young. We lived with my grandma, and we used to go visit him in Brussels because he was in Brussels most of the time.
Yeah.
And what they would do, I remember being very young. I mean, maybe I was 8, 7, and my sister, who's about 2 years younger, was about 6, something like that. And my mom would put us on a train going to Brussels. Was a direct train to Brussels from Paris. I had a British passport. My sister had some sort of ID card, and we would go to Brussels to visit him. And
Yeah.
then he would put us back on the train and send us back to
You
Paris.
told me a couple of stories when we were in Brussels together about
Yes, the hotel.
The hotel, yeah. Well, tell us some of the stories
Yeah.
about that.
So the Hotel Astoria was a very, very famous hotel in Brussels because apparently the various royal families would go there. It was a very fancy, old, stodgy hotel, and that's where we used to stay. And it was really nice. I mean, when we spent time there, we loved it because we could just, we wanted something from room service, we'd just call and get whatever we wanted, which we thought was great. Or throughout the lobby of the hotel, there were desks where you had, what do you call that? Letter paper and things embossed with the hotel address, and sitting on you could write letters. I mean, we just loved it.
Nice.
And I have a funny story actually about my father. He had decided that he wanted black peas and black-eyed peas and ham hocks or
Yeah,
whatever.
I remember. This is a story I remember. Yeah.
Yes. So what he did is he went to the he had bought whatever they needed, or he had told them whatever he needed, and he went to the kitchen. So we were going to have this meal, but I guess they didn't really know how to cook it. They didn't have a pressure cooker, I guess, to make the beans, whatever. And we ended up not eating it. And he was so upset, kept going back in to check on the, what was going on with the food. That was just a funny story.
And what was he doing work-wise? What was he doing?
I don't know. I mean, he did some things. He had some business affairs, I'm sure, but I'm not so sure what he was doing and how legal it was.
Yeah.
For that matter.
I mean,
I'm not about drugs or anything like that. I mean,
Yeah, I mean the
shady business practices.
And what he was that the reason why he couldn't go to France?
Yeah, I believe that something had happened legally, and he was not allowed to go to France or come into France, which is why my mom would send us
to Brussels. Yeah.
To Brussels, yeah.
Okay. So how long did that take place, and how long were you? What was it until you started leaving? You decided the family decided to move to New York.
Yeah.
That changed, right?
Not necessarily. In 1965, we moved from Paris to New York. I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe my parents wanted to be together. or wanted to somehow work out a way for us to be together because they couldn't be together in France. But we moved to New York, and I just remember it was an incredibly hot summer. And my first thought was, I'm not going to be able to live here because it was so very hot,
Really?
to the point that public pools were closed. There were water conservation measures that had been put into place. And we spent our first couple of nights at the New Yorker Hotel in Manhattan. And Dottie, my sister, and I literally sat in front of the air conditioner because we just...
That's insane. I mean, that's a very vivid picture. If you know New York City summer, for it to be that hot and closed, it's
especially coming from France.
Well, especially that, and how much older was he than my grandmother?
He was 25 years older.
25? I thought it was 20. 25 years
25,
older. Wow.
Right. He was born in 1906, and she's in 1931.
Wow.
He was actually the generation of my grandparents.
Yeah.
He was the same age as, I think, my grandfather by a year.
That's interesting.
Or maybe to my grandmother, yeah.
And when you moved to New York, what part of New York did you move to?
So we first
From
arrived
New Yorker?
when we moved into the village. We lived with his sister, my Aunt Clara.
Yeah.
And we moved in with her in a very, very, very small one-bedroom apartment.
Off of 7th Avenue?
Yes,
Right.
right across what used to be St. Vincent's Hospital.
Yeah.
Literally right across. So it's 7th Avenue and 11th Street.
Wait, you pointed that out the other day, right? We drove past it.
Yes, it was where I guess Zazzy's is now, where Two Boots used to be. Yeah,
That's
I
right.
pointed out. Then, 6 months into you having moved here, you were in school. Prior to the 6 months, you were in school, and then he passed away, right?
He passed away. He passed away in April.
What was it from?
Right after, well, at that point, he had actually gotten a job. He was working in a dry cleaner somewhere, which surprised me. I guess I don't know exactly why or what decision was made. And he died at work.
At the dry cleaners?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I remember is being home with my mom, and he hadn't come home. I mean, we didn't pay attention when he came home. And then there was a knock on the door. And it was two police officers who told my mom that, her husband was in the hospital. They didn't know if he was alive or not. That's what I remember.
And what did happen once she got the news?
I mean, we didn't quite know what to do. I guess.
I mean, she spoke enough English to understand that?
Oh, she spoke English, my mom.
Yeah.
Just, yeah. And so I guess, I don't know exactly what she did, but he had passed away. Yeah.
And I can't imagine moving to a new country, like you, Dottie, my aunt. I mean, she's just moved to a new country. Her husband dies. Obviously, you lived with his sister.
His sister.
But I can imagine what she must have gone through with that.
Yeah.
That's insane.
I think also the difficult thing for her was that she didn't want to have failed, right, in the decision to move with this husband to America. So I think that the option of going home, going back to France, to her was not an option. She was going to make it somehow.
That's inspiring.
Yeah.
It's a lot to process. I mean, I knew this stuff, but every time I hear it, it's interesting. What did not failing look like? What did she do? What was it like for you? What was it like for you too?
Okay, well, so we were going to school, right? We went to public school at the time.
Which one?
Okay, so my sister went to PS 41 in the village, and I was at PS 3, also in the village on Hudson, Christopher. So, and it was funny because we didn't speak English at all. And so we would go to school and every day have an extra hour of ESL to learn English. It didn't take long because we were young, so we learned English that way. My mom, I don't remember exactly when, but she actually got a job at some point. She actually in France had worked for Foster Wheeler, which is a big petroleum company, American petroleum company. She was a bilingual secretary, so she spoke both languages. So I don't think it was that difficult for her to get a job,
right.
But she was able to get a job. And she met my cousin.
Well, explain so it doesn't sound weird. As weird, yeah.
Yeah, so my mom and my father had a nephew. So the Aunt Clara, who we lived with, her son, she had two sons. One of them, his name is Roscoe. His real name is Roscoe. And he was the same age as my mom. He was 2 years younger, but basically the same age. And I guess they met, since we came to America and must have fallen in love.
Obviously, they weren't related. Yeah.
They're not blood relations, right? So they got married. And they had 2 children.
How long after my grandfather's death did she remarry?
He passed in April, and they married. I don't know because I wasn't there. I wasn't there when they got married. It was some point fairly soon after.
Mm. Okay. So when you're in school, you're a teenager at this point, and you're going to school. What is now LaGuardia, I believe, right?
PS.
The arts.
Oh, that's high school.
High school, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything am I skipping over?
No. I went from going to public, elementary school. I went to New Music and Art, is what it was called at the time. That was up on Convent Avenue, 135th Street. And I went to school there for art.
Mm-hmm. What kind of art?
Art was just drawing art. So it was either music,
visual,
or drawing, painting. I always enjoyed painting and drawing. So I went to school there and ended up graduating and going to NYU.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where did you live from the time, obviously you left Clara's apartment, where did you move to?
Yes, so we actually, not too long after they got married, they were able to move to Stuyvesant Town. And so they lived in Stuyvesant Town with us. When I became a freshman in college, that's the year that they moved, and they moved to Rockland County.
Oh, you were in NYU?
Yes.
And they left the city to Rockland County
when I was a freshman.
Where Mammy still lives now, right?
That's correct. Same house.
Same house, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So what was it like at NYU? Like, tell me, because I know your life kind of took a different turn there. What happened?
Yeah, actually it did. A lot of things changed at that point. For one, during that first year, I left home.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you left home.
I left Rockland County. I had moved up to Rockland County
during your first year of college.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. I used to commute with Brucey, as we call them.
Roscoe. Brucey.
Yeah, Roscoe, Brucey. We used to commute because he was at the hospital in the city, Metropolitan Hospital. So he would drop me off, and I would go to NYU. But I left home in November. And moved in. This is really a key point. Needed to find a place to live, and so I ended up moving into the women's residence that was affiliated with Saint Vincent de Paul, which is the church.
Oh, the church, the French church.
The French church,
which we just passed on the way here,
right.
Which is on 23rd Street. I pass all the time, and where I was baptized, and I had no idea that was the church. I was 3 years old when it happened.
Yeah. But that church had a residence that was located on 24th Street, right off of between 7th and 8th Avenue.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, you pointed that out before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a residence for women run by the French church with nuns. And I moved there. We called the priest, Father Tircelin, who was at the French church, was very, very close to us because my father died. He's the one, because my mom was by herself, he took us to summer camp. He did things like that for us. He was very close. So when I had no place to go, I called him, and he said he could arrange for me to have a room. And so I got a room in this French place. I lived it was me and this other woman. We shared this long, very, looked like an institutional room, like linoleum floors.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody, we had one metal locker, a small table, and a metal frame bed, and that was it. No kitchen, so you couldn't cook. You'd have to eat every meal out, which made it difficult. And then I had to get a job.
As a broke college student.
Right. And so I got a job, actually. And my first job was right near Christopher Street. There was a big supermarket, and I became a cashier there because I went to NYU, so it was convenient.
Okay.
So at the time, I made $45 a week.
Wow.
And the room was $9 a week.
How much would a meal be then for yourself?
Well, I didn't eat very much because I was very lucky. My roommate was from Honduras.
Yeah. And
so she would go to friend's house, and she would bring back things like pasteles and all sorts of wonderful food. And she was very nice. She would bring me stuff because I think she knew I was sort of poor.
and what's interesting, growing up here, spending time without wealthy parents, you have to have these friends, connections. And I mean, even now, if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be able to live the lifestyle I live,
Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah.
You know what's really funny is because I always said your house is like kind of like the UN because you let anybody stay there.
Of course.
Whenever they needed a place to stay, your mom's house was a place that, yeah, go ahead, you good. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you've experienced it, then you're more open to letting people,
Exactly.
you understand the struggle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's why you're my son. You didn't mention that.
So Chris, who I also refer to as Bams, I mean, he's on every show. You know him by now, but my mom considers him her fourth son.
Yep.
Yeah, especially since my twin brother, I have a twin brother, lives on the West Coast. Now Chris is taking the place of my twin brother. So
Yeah,
I know we're hard to tell apart, but that's Chris.
He's mad too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're at NYU.
So yeah, but what's really the thing that made a big sort of like a trigger for the rest of my life is I met a woman there who is also living in the home, the residence, and she was from Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why we became friends because she spoke French, right?
Mm.
So we became friends, and she kept saying to me, "Why don't you come out with me?" And I was really broke,
Yeah.
and I had a lot of work for school, so I always said, "No, I'm busy. I'm busy." Till one day I said, "Okay, I'll go." She goes, "So I know these Persian guys. Let's go."
Okay.
It's the beginning of this Persian story.
Yeah.
So anyway, so one night I did go with her, and we went to the village gate, and there were a couple of guys there who worked the village gate who were Persian, and she introduced me to
Village
them.
Gate was a club?
Yeah, it was a
Okay.
club. Yeah, so anyway, that's how I met Persian friends. They became friends. She ended up, I think. Yeah, she didn't.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off,
No, it's
but
okay.
of course you met Persian people in a nightclub.
Well, they worked there. That's what
I
they
know,
do.
of course they did.
Yeah.
There's so many Persian promoter. Yeah.
They were students, right?
Yeah.
They were both students,
Yeah.
and so I became very close friends with this one guy who was going to CW Post. He was a college student.
On Long Island?
Yeah, out Long Island. He worked as waiter. I mean, that's what they did. Worked as waiter. They got whatever job they could, and he was also very active politically.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the time the Shah was in power, and there was a very strong movement, anti-Shah movement.
And because he was very, from what I understand from documentaries, that he was very lavish and luxurious and spending tons of money on these things to bring attention politically to Iran as parties and so on. But there was still a lower class who didn't have enough to survive. So it was.
And it's even beyond that. It was persecution, like the Savak, the secret police called the Savak, that used people would be disappear or be tortured
Even
or whatever.
then, even during the Shah.
Absolutely during the Shah.
Really?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
know
And
that.
so there was a big movement against the Shah.
So this guy was.
Involved in
Yeah.
that. So I got involved with them, and we used to go to whatever rallies. I remember going to a big banquet. I'm trying to think back. I don't know if it was Long Island or Queens. It was a big banquet anyway, and there was an American guy there, and I'm not sure if he was a friend of the group or whatever. And he said, he had connections in his family that was with the FBI. And he said, "You see those guys?" He said, "They're FBI guys. They came in as the press."
Really?
And they were scoping, I guess, who participated in this because,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow, that's. I
Yeah.
mean, that really ties into a lot of the history of things that happened politically
Absolutely.
going forward.
And you're talking about in the 70s, right?
Yeah. What year was this?
Well, I graduated from NYU in 75. So,
So
this
was
was
this-
way before that.
Okay.
This would have been maybe 72, 73, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So I know you speak fluent Farsi along with other languages,
Mm-hmm.
French, English, Spanish, Italian, and Farsi, right?
Mhm.
When did you start learning Farsi? You started learning in NYU, right?
I started learning after I met them. I thought, I might as well. I'd like to. Well, actually, I had started by taking up Italian in NYU because I had a girlfriend who was in New York and she moved back to Italy, and I decided I'd like to be able to communicate with her in Italian. That'd be cool.
Right.
So I took Italian, then I took Farsi in NYU, and yeah, so I like languages. So that was I had a double major, city and regional planning and languages.
Languages overall?
Romance language. Well, it could be overall because I took Farsi. Obviously, it's
Yeah.
not a Romance language, but I took
Right.
Italian. But interestingly, it was my major in urban planning that then led me, after I completed NYU, after I graduated from NYU, I went to graduate school. I went to Pratt for graduate school. And I actually saw an ad in a professional magazine for the Harvard Institute for International Development that was looking for planners for Iran.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Internships, right? Internships. So I applied. I figured, great, I speak the language, I'd like to. So I ended up going there and worked there for the summer. This was the summer of 70, the summer between my 2 years of graduate school. So I was there from 75 to 77. So that summer, the summer of 75 is when 76.
So
that's when I went to Iran to work, and I worked. I worked for the Harvard Institute for International Development. A very interesting project they gave me. So there was a plan to actually build a major highway, that would cut right through the Bazaar, which is located in the south of Tehran.
Is that a good thing?
Well, that was part of my study. They wanted to know what would the impact be. So I was supposed to do a demographic economic study of this project, where they were going to be building this highway that would cut through. And so what they did is they gave me a driver, and they gave me a piece of paper that was supposed to be a map, but only about a third of it was filled in, just to give me guidance, because I'd never, and the guy would drive me down there, and I would just walk through the bazaar and map out as I walked along additional, but also got to see what the bazaar was all about. And the amazing thing about the bazaar is that it was a place, right, like a heart, that everything that came into the city came through the bazaar and then was distributed throughout. But also there was a huge industry in there, manufacturing industry. They made things. They had the metal bazaar, they had the rug bazaar, they had all different parts. And it was so vital to the city that there was no way they could just bulldoze through, a highway. Yeah. So that was basically...
So you're partly responsible for the landscape of Tehran.
Part of it, because the bazaar still stands and will stand for many more 100 years,
hopefully.
I'm sure.
I've never been. I've seen photos. I know the importance of the bazaar.
It's very, very important. Yeah. And what's also interesting is within the bazaar, it's like a city. They have mosques, they have schools, they have firehouses, they've got police, they've got everything. There are people who spend their entire life there.
In the bazaar. It's almost like Manhattan versus all of New York City, but smaller.
Exactly. They can be self-sufficient without ever leaving the bazaar. Wow.
So where were you living at the time?
At the time, so I had a roommate who you've met.
Wow, so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who was it? And I'll tell you my interesting story.
Okay. Mary.
Yeah.
So Mary and I rented the top floor, which is really the rooftop of a building. The building was owned by a Persian family. The parents were on the first floor. The married son was on the second. The son that had lived in America was on the third floor. And Mary and I were on the rooftop. On the rooftop, there were 2 rooms, 2 bedrooms. And
was the son that lived in America the one you knew?
No.
Okay.
No, I didn't know. My friend Lily got me that apartment.
Okay.
Remember Lily?
No.
She had gone to Pratt with me.
I remember Ati.
Yeah, but not Lily, I think you met. But anyway, she when I first got there, her parents helped me a lot also in terms of work, whatever. But anyway, that's another story. So we each had our own bedroom. We shared the kitchen, the bathroom. She was a student at Tehran University, and that's where I lived.
That's funny. So Mary's daughter reached out to me on Facebook a few years ago, and like, is your mom Jackie Bruce? I'm like, before I answered her, I asked my mom, do you know this lady who was talking about her mom being Mary? She goes, this is my roommate from Iran. And then we connected, and they actually invited us to Toronto for Nowruz. Yeah. And we met all their family and spent Persian New Year in Toronto.
Yeah, exactly.
So this was during your summer internship?
No, this was after. So I skipped a part, I have to say. I did the internship. I enjoyed it. They said to me, come back next year, you have a job, which was amazing. Because when I was in the 70s, late 70s, it was very hard to get work. I think I was the only one of 2. There were 2 of us who had jobs of the entire graduating class.
Wow.
So I moved to Iran.
When you went back, you just studied at Pratt? You did?
Well, I studied at Pratt. Yeah, I was studying at Pratt. So I came back, got my degree.
Yeah.
And then moved to Iran because I had a job, which was a big deal. And I went to the offices. I got to Iran. I went to the offices where I'd been working, and I was looking for the gentleman who represented Harvard, because Harvard had a contract with the city of Tehran, they were training the Iranians to develop a city planning office and function for Tehran.
Yeah.
And they were on a 3-year contract, and they were expecting the contract to be renewed, so that's why they hired me.
Yeah.
So I go back there, and I'm looking for the guy, and I don't see anybody. I don't see any Americans there, so I go and ask. And apparently, the contract had not been renewed.
And you didn't find out before you left?
I didn't, but, I was a stupid student. When they told me come back, well, how you? They even talked about salary. I didn't think of put it on paper.
Yeah.
No, I said, okay, I'll be back.
But even before you moved over, you didn't bother contacting them somehow?
No, because I told them
I guess
I'll
you
graduate.
Couldn't email. There's no email then.
There was no
Yeah.
email. There was no cell phone. There was no. Remember, it was a little
Yeah.
bit different, right?
Yeah.
I didn't write letters to them. I mean, I just went there,
Yeah.
and so I found myself without a job,
So what'd you do?
and that's where I got a lot of help from Lily, because I got a job at a institute called Moassese Simin, which was a language institute where they would teach Iranians wanting to go to university in America or in an English-speaking country, or actually America, because they would have to take the TOEFL exam, right? So I was teaching English to Americans, to students who want to come to America.
And how long were you doing that?
I did that for over a year, because then I met a girl who was British, who worked at the Simin Institute, and her brother-in-law was in the Ministry of Roads.
Oh, okay.
And when she found I was telling, I had a master's in city and regional planning, she said, I'll talk to him. So she spoke to him, and he got me a job with an Italian firm in Tehran.
And why didn't you move back to New York when you had no job? You liked Iran?
Well, I liked Iran. I was happy there. I had friends, but more importantly, I had taken all the refunds, all the funds that I had to buy my ticket to go to Iran. I couldn't afford to go back home. So I figured I'll have a job, and I was okay living there. I was happy. As far as I was concerned, I had moved to stay there.
This is Iran and not the Islamic Republic of Iran. This is
This is pre-revolution.
Yeah. Just clarifying for people who are watching.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you got a job
so
at the Rhodes?
I got a job at that institute, and then I found this person who referred me to this Italian company called Italstrade, also doing highways, and they were looking for somebody to draft highways, to be a draftsperson. I took the job, and I did drafting for them, highway ramps, highway things.
I thought you drafted bridges. I told people
bridges as well.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm making sure.
Well, you have ramps, highways, bridges, things like that.
And all over Iran or mostly Tehran?
No, it was a major highway project from the north of Iran all the way down to the south, to the Gulf. Yeah.
And how long were you working in this Italian company?
I was there for a while until somebody showed up one day. An Italian guy came over who had worked for that company, and he was now working for a consortium of American-French company. He came around, and I was introduced to him, and he said to me, they're looking for people in the other firm. I was like, okay, I'll consider this. 'Cause I'm thinking here, I'm a draftsperson, I have a master's, and maybe I can do more. So I actually was interviewed, and was hired by a major firm. It's Morrison Knudsen Pacific, which is a huge American engineering firm. And then there was 2 French firms. Grand Travaux de Marseille was one of them, and Razel was the other. But so a big, big firm. And they were subbing to a well-known engineering firm, Howard Needles, Tamman, and Bergendorf. And they were doing also highway work. But they hired me for a whole lot of different things. For one, I was the only one who could speak French, English, and Farsi. So on occasions, they would have meetings with the ministry folks or whatever, and all I had to do was sit there and listen, because nobody else could speak Farsi. So when the Iranians were having their own internal conversation, I could understand, and if they said something noteworthy, I would report back to my French or American colleagues. The other thing they had me do was to go out and look for parts. So they would send me the chauffeur, a driver, and they would take me, because the places where you can buy parts, like neoprene gaskets or things for road construction, were towards the south of the city, which is not the best place. But they would send me because I was with a driver, and I could go and look for parts.
They send you to the more dangerous parts of
the places
Tehran? They send you, okay.
I had a driver with me. It was okay. The other thing I did job site housing planning. Designing or developing job site housing. And also things that I had never done before, but somehow the thing I was going to say is that you can always learn, right? If you care about
Of
figuring
course.
something out, you can. I had to review compaction reports for the road beds and
Yeah.
decide if it had to be redone based on the compaction percentages.
So we were working in this company, this Italian, well now
This is American
American
French. Yeah.
French company. How long are you working there?
I worked until the revolution.
All right, well, let's skip back a step. When did you meet my dad?
Okay.
And where?
So go back to the Italian company where I met this guy. His name was Romolo Fumarola.
Poor
He's the
name.
one. He's the one who actually, introduced me to the firm that I got the other job. But we became friends, and he really liked to hang out, and so we used to go to these clubs,
Mhm.
now-
Nightclubs.
nightclubs
Yeah.
in Tehran, and so
Are you all surprised?
and that's where I met your father.
What was that? What was it like? What was the night?
It was these were like really high-end clubs. I mean, if you weren't a foreigner, because they let foreigners in, of
They
course.
did or they didn't?
They did. If you're a
Yeah.
foreigner, you're American, you're French, or whatever, they'll
Yeah.
let you in. But it was like people of a certain
Affluent.
level, affluent, yeah.
Okay.
And so you'd go in, and it was called Key Club,
Key Club. Mhm.
yeah. And so that's where I met him.
How? What was the story?
So I was with Romolo. Now Romolo happened to be gay.
Yeah.
So he always was, looking for people, I guess, to meet people.
Yeah.
And through people he had met, I met other, and I saw, your dad was at the end of the bar. That's what I remember. He was standing at the end of the bar, and he came over, we just started talking, and we just, that's how it happened. I met
Okay.
him in the bar,
In the club.
in the club.
Okay.
Maybe that's where you got your club thing going.
I wonder if both of you were in a nightclub. Where I get mine going from?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And how? What did the? Give me a timeline from when you met, and you're obviously working for this American French company. How
Yeah.
did the relationship progress, and so on?
He was doing his military service. So he was required to, he didn't work because he had to go to do his military service. But he did have a company, which I guess his parents had set up for him, where he imported things, building material, like tiles and things from Italy.
Mhm.
So anyway, so he was doing military service. I was working. But then we used to spend a lot of time with his friend Bero, who you've met.
Yeah, I did meet Bero. I did meet Bero.
Right.
Bero, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who now lives in France.
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
I hung out with him in Paris. He took me to that what was a great Persian restaurant, and we had caviar and vodka. It was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I met Behro. And we hung out with him. We used to go to his house and play cards.
Backgammon.
No, Hok Bazi. It's Persian games.
Okay.
And so Behro was doing his military service as well.
Yeah.
And one day he says to us, he said, they told me. Now, by then, I'm trying to think, I don't know if I think your dad may have been done or closer to finishing than Behro. But by then, he says that they told him to go home, take off his uniform, and not come back to the base. And they left the doors open, and they left minimal amount of staff, and we're thinking, what is going on? And sure enough, 3 days later was the revolution. Now-
In between then, were you going back and forth to Paris on occasion?
No.
No?
I never went to Paris while I was there. I did come back to America for over the summer. I came back to visit my family, and then came back to Iran. Yeah.
Okay.
But so I was expecting a baby, a child.
Yeah.
Your father and I got married. Very small wedding. It was just Behroch and I think Shahram.
Why were my grandparents weren't not
I
there?
don't know. And not for any particular
I've seen
reason.
a photo. Bill showed me a photo.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, not because we didn't want them. We lived with them, At some point, I moved in with your
In
dad
Karaj?
on Karaj,
Yeah.
and lived with them. So I don't know why. Maybe we just decided to do it. It was a weekday. It wasn't a big deal. I mean, like a weekday. We weren't going to do a big to-do,
Yeah. Yeah.
So we, it's actually a funny story about that. It's one of the, you have a paper, they tell you that there has to be a dowry of some sort, and then the man gives you also a variety of things, part of the wedding, whatever. And one of the things that I was told, it was a kalamallah, right?
Kalamallah.
Which is supposed to really mean word of God or
Yeah.
a word from God, but I thought it was a kalimullah, the head of a mullah. And I was like, this is very strange. Why are they giving me a Kali mullah?
I'm learning Farsi now. There's so many intricacies with one sound sounding differently, and it means something very different. Usually there's something very funny.
Yeah. It was, anyway. So we got married, and the revolution occurred, which was a big problem because basically there was no work, right?
Yeah.
We stopped getting paid.
What was it like going on? These revolutions, everything kind of stopped, and everyone's concerned about the political climate and the structure of the government and society in general?
It's initially, right? It's just like you'd walk down the street and you'd have corners with people with sandbags and maybe a 15-year-old with a machine gun or whatever, because Khomeini now put these people into place. And the sad thing is, even prior to revolution, folks like, the people who were economically less fortunate or whatever, truly believed that they were going to get gold, they were going to get,
Was it promised to them?
Whatever propaganda was coming out from Khomeini, but, they were going to take care of all those. Which
sounds very familiar these days in the U.S.
Yeah.
With, not comparing Trump promising all kinds of things for the people with less income, less fortunate, and they're not getting anything.
But that's what happened with Khomeini.
Yeah.
So, and I think, again, just politically speaking, I think that because
for that matter, every politician, Biden as well, everyone's promising these things that most people aren't getting. Yeah.
What's interesting about the revolution is that I'd never been through a revolution, but I always expected it to be something that boom happens, like it's unexpected happens.
Yeah.
But it was very odd that Behro had said, they told us go home, don't come back.
Yeah.
And so it was planned, right? The people who needed to know obviously knew that it was going to happen. And next thing you knew, everything was there wasn't a revolution where people ran down the street yelling and screaming. Nothing. It just, all of a sudden, it was in place.
That's interesting.
Which was very odd.
Because a revolution, we think of what we see in movies, right?
Exactly.
And it can't just be in place because the movie's not interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The other thing that was interesting is I remember, and I may be wrong, to the north of Tehran, you have the Alborz Mountains, and you have, there used to always be like lights and things, but I just remember looking up and there was nothing.
What do you mean lights?
They were just like lights. I don't know what they were, but I just remember noting, just like at the time before the revolution, that the lights were no longer there. So I'm not exactly sure, because the Shah had left, I think. I don't remember, because he was ill.
Yeah.
But I know, so he left, and then people just sort of,
wow.
It was odd.
So when was there concern?
Well, concern when you go out and you see a 15-year-old, and now there's a curfew, right? So now you've got to be home by a certain time. Yeah. You've got to close your shades because you're afraid of light. And then you start seeing newspapers with pictures of the people they had executed, right? And the people they had executed were people who were wealthy, people who, for example, had horses and the means or whatever. And you actually see the picture. It's in the newspaper front page. And that was a little scary. And I know at one point, because we were in Karaj, so we were out of the city, but I know that your grandparents and we were concerned that what if somebody came to the house? Mm-hmm. What if somebody came and decided to, the mobs or whoever?
So would they do anything to protect
Well,
themselves?
yeah, we just turned the lights off, closed the big,
Yeah.
Because they lived in the middle, they would live in the middle of the country.
Yeah.
Like it was just gardens and bogs.
So what transpired from there? Is it 3 days later the revolution started, and how long were you in Iran and Tehran before, with the revolution having taken place before leaving?
Okay, so the revolution happened in January, right? That's when Khomeini came in. We did not leave until...
And you're pregnant at the time.
Yes, but I think I have one baby, even though I'm getting sort of big. But in Iran, the doctor I went to, because Madar, your grandmother, Baba's mother, was the administrator of the hospital. Yeah. So she took me to a doctor. But they don't examine you. They just listen to you. They don't do any kind of internal examination or anything, And I did forget something. You almost
ski accident? Is that what it's on?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
I was going to say. So I was pregnant. I forgot about that. I was pregnant, not very pregnant as far as I knew, right? But when I went skiing, because we used to go, that great ski slopes in the north of Tehran. In fact, the slope I think had been designed by Jean-Claude Killy. And I don't know if you know Jean-Claude Killy, but he's a famous French skier. Anyway, we went skiing and I took a really bad fall. I went flying and landed literally on my face, on my belly. And 2 days later, I wasn't very graceful. It was a bad fall. And 2 days later, I had very bad hemorrhaging. Yeah. And so I spent 10 days in the hospital. And I figured, okay, it was that bad. I figured whatever it is, it's gone. Yeah. But I think close to the 10th day, they said they heard a heart. Yeah. So they sent me back, I had lots of shots to whatever they did. They sent me back. And I guess it was still there.
Yeah, thank God. But so you just go back. She takes you to the hospital, and they check you out,
and then they said, they hear a heartbeat. I said, okay, so they said the baby's still there; it's not gone.
With Modad? No, I'm saying after. Or was that when you went to the? Okay, that's.
Yeah, I spent 10 days in the hospital. Gotcha. She took me there, and I spent 10 days, and then left the hospital and went about my life. But at some point, given things that were going on with the revolution and work and no money, we couldn't work, we decided that we would try to leave. And so every single day, they would announce on the radio, they would say, the form, because we had to fill out a special form. And to get out of Iran, you need to get a special stamp called Mohe Narhos Vaziri, which is the prime minister's stamp, to be able to leave. Now, Baba and I had one passport together. You had a husband-wife passport, which was very important, right? So if I got the stamp in that passport, because at that point, men were not allowed to leave unless they were doctors or foreign students. So if I were able to get that stamp, I believe that we could both have left. So they announced that on tomorrow morning at such and such place, go and you can get the application, you can apply to leave. So we go to this place, and there's a gate, and there's a guy behind on the desk, and he said, sorry, there will be no applications given today. It's not going to happen. So we go back. And this happened several times, where they would announce that you were going to be able to do the application and be able to get the paperwork done to leave, and you'd get there and they wouldn't be there, or they wouldn't do it, it was closed. Mm-hmm. And what we started doing, because living in Karaj, we wanted to get there early, we started sleeping at the office. This is the company that that Baba had. Yeah. We started staying there because that was in Tehran, so we could get there faster. And so one day we hear again, they're going to have the applications, everything. You've got to go to the passport office. So we got up, and by then I was pretty big, even though...
Did you know you were having twins yet?
No, I didn't know anything. Oh. And all I knew is that I was supposed to give birth in July. Yeah. So figure this is March, right? So April, May, June, July. So I'm already maybe 5 months, something, but I'm very big. So we find out that we go to the passport office, so we get there really, really early. And they're giving out numbers, and we had like a huge number, over 1,000. There were already that many people just waiting. And we're standing there, and it's getting more and more crowded, and we're sort of staying to the back because I'm, and a little bit big. So, and I look to the side, and I see the same guy that we've seen every time we've gone, and they were not giving anything. There was the same guy, the one that had been sitting at the desk, the guy who was at each time we went, I was there with obviously the guy who was in charge, or I'm not sure. And I see him, and I tell your father, I said, Kabuj, I said, you see that guy? That's the guy. And he's walking. And I said, wait for me right here. I'll be right back. Mm-hmm. So I go walking up to this guy, and I said, hi. I said, I've seen you. I speak Farsi. I said to him, I've seen you many times, and I'm here because I need to get the paper. He looks at me and goes, okay, you come with me. And so I follow him. And he actually brings me into the passport office building. Well, mind you, outside, a lot of people waiting. So he brings me in, he says, okay, and he sits. So he asked me to sit down in the lobby area, and he leaves. So maybe he did that because being that I look pregnant, he probably wanted me to just have a seat. So I'm sitting there, and I'm waiting. I had the passport with me. That was important. And after sitting there for a while, I decided I'm not going to sit here if he's not coming back. I wasn't sure if he's coming back or what, but I got up and I started walking through the building, and I found him in an office on the upper floors. And so I went in and I said, hi. I said, I've been waiting downstairs, but I'm here to get the form. I said, I'm pregnant, as you can see, and I need to be with my mom to give birth. Why? Because culturally, I figured it would resonate with them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A mother. So he says, but look outside. You see all those people? I've promised it to a lot of people, and nobody's going to get it today. I said, I understand. I said, but if I don't get this today, my doctor will not allow me to fly because I'm too far ahead in my pregnancy, which was a lie, but I was so big, he believed it.
Yeah.
And so he said, okay, hold on. He got this, he had a leather satchel type of thing. He gets it and he says, well, do you have the passport? I said, yeah, I have it. And so he takes out a stamp. He goes, like that, stamps the passport. He said, please, don't say anything to anyone. I said, I assure you I will not. I said, I'm not going to say a word. I promise you I won't say anything. So I went back downstairs and I went to the front, and the crowd was so bad. I'm talking about thousands and thousands of people who were going to be very pissed off very soon when they found out they couldn't get anything that day. And the guys were like running out with a machine gun, and I had this like pocketbook with like a chain thing. They nearly grabbed me as they're pulling off, and so one of them actually escorted me out because it wouldn't have been safe. And I went back and I found Bubba right where I had left him. Yeah. And I said, forget about it. I said, let's just leave. He goes, well, leave? I said, yeah, look at this. It's not going to happen. I said, let's just go. And I didn't want to look happy or anything because I didn't want him to like think something good had happened. So we walked quite a few blocks, and I said, I got the stamp. He goes, what? I said, shut up.
Nice.
It was really, and so we actually had to go from there. We actually were able to go because you could not even book a flight unless you had the stamp.
Right.
And then it was all paperwork, whatever. So we went back, we told my dad and Pedar, and we ended up packing up all our stuff. We bought a couple of Persian rugs.
Because they want to explain why. Well, because according you couldn't take money out of the country.
You could not take money.
So you had to take assets, and
right.
the assets you got Persian rugs and caviar, right?
Caviar was for us.
Oh,
the Persian rugs was what we ended up selling. Yeah, and so we actually.
How many rugs did you take?
We had the one that I have at home, the one that we sold. So we had two. One was a very, very good, it's called a nain, which is silk rug, beautiful silk rug. I have pictures at home. And the other one was a Turkeyman, which is not as valuable, but one that I liked. Yeah. The one that I have in the house.
Okay.
Yeah. So we ended up selling, I'm not going to jump there yet. We ended up getting a flight, and we left on New Year Day. Ruz et Nowruz. We left Iran.
Nowruz, yeah, not New Year's. It's Persian.
On the 21st, New Year, Persian New Year
Spring
Day.
solstice.
Yes.
And everyone, tell me about the flight when you crossed. Because you were nervous.
Well, we were very nervous because there had been flights that remember, doctors or foreign students could leave, right? They didn't have the restrictions that we had. And there were flights that actually left, and before they crossed the air boundary, the flight was turned back around and brought back. Mm-hmm. Why, I don't know. So, to be honest, we got on and said we had no guarantee would fly off. Even though the plane took off, we didn't know.
And this was to Paris.
This was to Paris, yeah. And so, at some point, though, they said we had passed the border. All the people, we took their chadors off. Yeah.
And they weren't required to wear this until the revolution, right? So the chador was a fairly new thing,
right. You weren't, but the women, I guess it was, I didn't wear it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and there were people who were more religious, but a lot of people wore it just, to get through. Okay. Right? And so we actually got to Paris.
Yeah, you were in a hospital for a month. Well, when did you find out you were having twins?
Okay, so not right away. I had to set myself up with a doctor in France. And I remember one of the things that I saw a doctor, we had to do is get a sonogram. Mm-hmm. By then, I'm trying to think of, that must have been, I would say April. So very shortly after we got to Paris. We, by the way, had no place to live. And so we ended up living initially in the room that my uncle, Tonton Kléber, and it was a 5-floor walk-up room, with a bed, no kitchen, a sink, no plumbing, so you couldn't run water, and then a toilet in the hallway
Shared toilet,
for everybody. But it was what they call a Turkish toilet.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of just a hole, literally a hole in the floor. You know, we were there. It was very hard because all there was a twin bed, one twin bed for Bubba and me.
Yeah.
And it was very hard because he didn't have much room.
Yeah. Well, and also you're shrinking. You were 5'10" at the time, and then he's 6 feet, and he had to fit on a twin bed, and you're pregnant.
Yeah.
It's quite the visual.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we just kind of not go through too much detail because we don't have too much time. But yeah.
So had a sonogram at the hospital, and we're lying there, and then it's a man, I guess a technician, whatever, is doing it, and we're lying there, and it's like taking a long time. Now, I didn't know how long things like that take, but I was there for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And finally says, somebody else is going to come, and I'm thinking there's something wrong.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with this child. And so this woman comes, and she's a technician, and she starts, and I'm like, and I'm getting she goes, oh, I see. I'm like, this is definitely something wrong. And then she starts to count. 1, 2, 3, 4. I said, either there's an extra something or there's something missing. And she goes, I understand. There's 2. And I'm like, 2 what?
Yeah.
2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes. She goes, 2 babies. And that was quite a shock. It really was a shock because we had nothing.
Yeah. Now you have 2 kids instead of 1.
And yeah, and yeah. And so anyway, I ended up very shortly thereafter being put in the hospital because I was, at risk of giving birth too early.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when Baba went back to Iran because he couldn't stay in France. I mean, he was waiting. We had done the paperwork in Iran. We had started the paperwork for him to get a green card.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had to wait till that went through. So when he got his green card, he'd be able to come.
Mm-hmm.
So he went back to Iran. I stayed in France. You guys were born. You were, because you were premature, you were in the hospital for about a month. And then Baba came back, and we actually took you out of the hospital together.
Nice.
And then exactly on the day that you were 2 months old, I flew with you guys to the U.S.
Yeah.
And he had, again, to go back to Iran because he was still waiting for his paperwork.
Oh, wow. Okay. And then, and when he, tell me if I'm skipping over anything, but when he came to the U.S., was an interesting day.
Yes. Very interesting, actually. And he was very lucky. He actually arrived the day that the hostages were taken, the American hostages at the embassy were taken.
Mm-hmm.
And I sometimes think that if he hadn't come on that day, maybe he wouldn't have been able to leave. Who knows?
And it was the last Iran Air flight to land in the U.S., wasn't it?
I don't know that, but
Or
it must have been, I
yeah.
don't know. Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what else from here?
Well, I mean, in terms of,
You.
in terms of me, well, I worked, I did go back and start working. At some point, your father got some work. We separated. Your Baba and I separated. We came.
How old was I when that happened?
You were. I moved out when you were a year and a half.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, we moved to Weehawken,
Yeah.
Angelique Street.
At 1.5 years old?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know it was that early.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So we moved to Weehawken, and eventually he and I actually divorced.
And where did he live at the time?
Well, he stayed in Suffern, and because I left the house, right? He stayed in Suffern. Eventually, he moved down to Atlantic City and worked in Atlantic City.
I remember us going to visit him then.
Exactly.
And sleeping on beach chairs, if I remember correctly.
Because he had like an efficiency. He was living in a very small apartment. We'd go down to visit sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us more from there. We don't have to go into so much detail because I find
this part was more. There was, I think,
more
detailed
fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, you guys went to the UN school.
Yeah.
Initially.
United Nations International School in Manhattan.
In Manhattan. And then subsequently you went to the Hudson School in Hoboken, and then at some point...
Where were you working at the time? The Transit Authority, right?
Actually, at first I worked for for a American firm, STV Engineers, and I was very fortunate. I was able to get the job because I had bridge experience. And so I was drafting bridges in STV Engineers, but I made a deal when they hired me. I said, I have a master's in city and regional planning, so if there should ever be an opportunity, I would like to be considered. And sure enough, 6 months after starting, I was moved to the planning department.
Okay.
And worked on a number of things, including worked for contracts we had with the Transit Authority.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And tell us more about the timeline, the events that you think stand out from there.
I think for me, it's more professional, like changes in my in work. So I worked for STV Engineers, and then I eventually interviewed with the Transit Authority, and I did not get a job with them until I was on maternity leave from your sister Erica, who was born. Mm-hmm. So I
not with my father, but with your ex-husband.
Exactly. So I actually was hired. I was actually hired by the Port Authority after she was, after she was born. I had worked for the Transit Authority, went to work for the Port Authority, worked there from 1986 to 2003.
You weren't remarried yet then, right? Well, kind of, but not officially.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back when we actually. We didn't marry yet.
After
Alex
you
was
and
born.
Bubba separated, you I guess years later you met Rob,
who I'd known for many years.
Right.
Right.
And then Erica was born, Alex was born, then you got married to him.
Yes.
And then Sydney was born, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
So you have 5 kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
5. Anyway, so I worked for the Port Authority and then went back to the Transit Authority. And in the Transit Authority, I think that's when my career really evolved, and I did many different things. And
well, outside of your career, was there anything else that you feel like? I mean, your career is important. You were for a large number of years a single parent.
Mm-hmm.
Remember those times a lot, like very vivid memories of those times. And then you were no longer a single parent. But what kind of what transpired that you think stands out in your life event-wise?
Well, again, I still think for me at that point it was more
Career,
my work. Yeah. And I think it's important to say that throughout my life, right, I ended up in positions that maybe I hadn't done before, or they were brand new positions. For example, at the Transit Authority, I managed 2 bus depots for them. Mm-hmm. I ran 2 whole depots.
Yeah.
I'd never done that before, but it's not to be afraid to ever just stretch a little bit.
Didn't you own a store in Queens at some point?
That's long before.
Yeah.
That's long before.
You skipped that. When was this?
That was
NYU?
this is when I knew Majid, the friends, the Persian guys that I had met, where we had opened a store.
Together?
Yes, I guess there were 4 of us.
Where was the store?
In Queens.
Where?
Not too far from Flushing, but along.
Gotcha. Yeah. I didn't know when the timeline was for that.
Yeah, that's a long time ago.
So yeah, I don't know. I mean, for me, the parts that stand out are the parts before I was born. I guess those are really interesting. There's historical significance behind them. Mm-hmm. But post 79, I guess in the 80s and 90s, is more just career stuff.
Yeah. I mean, surviving, supporting my family.
Yeah, exactly. And now, and you worked for years. How many years did you work in transportation and city planning?
Probably my entire career.
Yeah.
In some fashion.
And you're retired now.
And I'm working still.
Yeah,
yes,
you're working
I'm
still.
retired.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thankfully, because I think you need to have something to do all the time. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you're bothering me.
Oh, wow.
No, I think it's. I don't. All jokes aside, I think you're one to do nothing.
No, I mean, I don't do
even
nothing
when you were
anyway.
retired and didn't go back to consulting, you were fixing the house and always making a project. So, yeah. All right, so I have some other questions now for you. These are questions I ask everybody.
Okay.
What do you do for fun?
Well, right now, my fun is actually strength training.
Which I've been telling her to do for years. Years.
I finally listened.
Finally.
No, I do. I really enjoy it. I do strength training. I love to travel. I've been traveling a lot since I've retired. That's my goal. Despite I work, I take extended periods of time and go away. Like I'm going away the month of June.
Yeah, well, me too.
Yeah.
We'll be like,
Yeah.
I'll see you in Paris.
Yeah.
What at this point in your life, what are some goals and dreams you still want to accomplish that you haven't yet?
Well, it's probably more places I want to go to that I haven't gone to. I mean, I tend to gravitate always back to Europe because I get to see my family, but there are places I've never been to that I really would like
where?
to. Well, a friend of mine and I are planning to go to Bali next year.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah. I'd love to. I mean, anywhere in the world. One day,
Sounds
maybe
familiar.
I'd go back to Iran if the situation changes.
Inshallah, as they would
Inshallah,
say.
yeah.
Inshallah. Yeah, I would love to go there. That's number one on my list, and hopefully one day we do go there.
Yeah.
You know?
When it's safe.
I mean, I've heard it's safe, but you hear all kinds of stories, right? And obviously the political climate is tricky. I have my friend Mazu goes all the time. He's telling me to go. One day I'll go. Weigh out the stories and see what's worth believing or what's not, and make a decision to go when I feel like it's the right time.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, we're here. What advice would you give high school you?
That's a tough question because I would not want to give myself advice that would change any part of my life. So if I had given advice to say, in terms of relationships, do this differently, that would have meant maybe I wouldn't have gone through what I went through, and I wouldn't have what I have today.
I guess I wouldn't think so realistically in that regard.
Uh-huh.
Think about what you would have liked to have told yourself then. Assuming it would all transpire to the same stuff now.
Okay. I guess I'm sort of I was a serious person in some ways. Maybe not to take certain things
Really?
so serious. Yeah.
I mean, you went through a hard time. You lost your father at 12. That was a challenging relationship from my understanding as well. You left your home. I mean, we still speak to the family in France, and like Catherine and them, they still talk about how hard it was when you guys left for them and for you.
Yeah. But still, I mean, I guess in terms of
could've
my
hardly needed
family,
to
I
show.
always was, I still am, I think, taking care of people, whether it be my mom, my sister,
Yeah.
I was very serious about things.
Which is, when you're that age, maybe not the role you should be taking.
Right. And that's sort of what happened. My mom being a single mom,
Yeah.
I took care of my little sister.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay. That's good advice. What's your favorite part of Outsiders?
Oh, my son.
If she didn't answer that, we'd end the interview right now. and never
I think
air
this
it.
might be the first person that actually means that they're saying it.
No, I'm very proud of you. I really,
Thank you.
truly mean that,
Appreciate it.
because I know you very well. And I know,
Yeah. What do you know?
oh, trust me. Actually, actually, this is maybe a good time for me to mention. I think some people may want to know more about you, especially when you were like a little bit younger or things like that, right?
Sure.
So I just want to mention, don't be embarrassed. I want to share. So I have a paper here. So back in 1994, when
I
you
know
were
what this
14,
is. I was a bit of a troublemaker.
he was a troublemaker, but at the age of 14, somehow he ordered COD from the Smoky Mountain Knife Works, and here, Kissing Crane Stiletto, and a Poor Man gold-toned metal boot knife.
I bought some knives online. One of them was still you brought.
You've been asking me for these for a long time. I figured
This
it's
one is
time.
weird. I want this one. I want this knife right here. How does this work? Let me
You better
cut
be
myself.
careful.
Oh, God.
So I figured I'd give you the receipt. You may want to frame it. And here,
I can't even open this thing anymore. It's been so long. I'll figure it out later. This is a stiletto I bought at 14 years old. This is great.
And I promptly called the company and said, do you know how old my son is? That you're sending him this.
I'll figure out how to order this. What did I buy here? What is this thing?
That you ordered.
What was I trying to do with this? See, this one's cool. I don't know what this is, but thanks for finally giving them back. How many years has it been? 30 years?
I figure it was safe now.
It's been 30 years since I've had this.
Look at it, 1994.
94, 30 years. It only took me 30 years to get it back.
It's May what? What's the...
Is there a date on here?
Yeah, right up here on the top.
May 10th.
May 10th, so we're
close.
very
almost
close.
30, Actually, no, we're releasing this on May 12th.
So it'll be...
Yeah.
I was telling your mom about the knife story in your car and the Jamaican tow truck driver.
Oh, yeah. This would have been nice. Then. I was going to buy a knife, for like a handy knife for things like that. No, I don't need to. Save some money. Okay, what else did you want to talk about?
That's it. That's all I want to share.
Appreciate that. Glad you get my knives back. Shame on you for taking a 14-year-old's knives away.
Yeah.
Okay, you said I'm your favorite part of Outsiders. Okay. Let's see. I already asked you about your dreams. We're in the North Face showroom, and North Face's slogan it's never stop exploring.
Yeah.
So I guess what I want to ask you is, how do you incorporate exploration in your life? And did that camera just shut off? Yeah. How do you continue to include exploration in your life? I know you said travel, but is there any other ways in your life that I know you're very, in a way, similar. I get it from you, I'm sure, but really enjoy other cultures and diving into that. So maybe I'm answering for you, but go ahead.
No, but you're absolutely right. I do really enjoy it, and I enjoy having people around. Not just people around from different places, different cultures, different environment. Like Bam said initially, our home was always open. Anybody had no place to go came over.
A lot of friends that
and it's nice, and that's why I also enjoyed languages, because through languages you really understand somebody's culture. Your languages are very important to understanding a people. And
I'm glad I've picked up on the ability to pick up on languages. A lot easier than most. Obviously, my first language. I appreciate that we spoke French first, so it's my first language. Then I learned English, or maybe slightly at the same time. But
no,
French,
you were older.
Yeah?
You didn't speak English till you started, daycare, whatever. That's little school. Remember
3 years old,
international preschool? You were like 3-4 years old.
Yeah, there you go. I didn't speak English till then. But picking up Spanish, Portuguese, now I'm taking Farsi, but I'm able to pick them up easier. And it's a superpower. I appreciate having that. This is my favorite question I ask people, because usually it's fun. But what is your most embarrassing moment? I know you have plenty.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, you should have warned me about this.
So when Elvis says that, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Is what?
I can't think of something that was really embarrassing. That's the...
I can think some stuff for you if you want.
Okay, go ahead. I want to hear this one.
I'm going to spare you from the one with Amy at work.
Amy at work? What happened with Amy at work?
Bathroom. We're going to skip that one.
No, tell me. I really want to hear this one.
Absolutely not. I'm not going to be telling
Is it me or is it her?
It's you. Do you have no embarrassing stories you can share?
Well, this one, if I knew it, just tell me where it was. I'll get some.
At work. Did you have her in an office somewhere? Maybe you went to an office where she was working, and I don't know, maybe you guys were messing with me when you told me the story, but it's kind of disgusting.
I think...
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
No, I think it's ringing a bell, but I don't remember the details.
But is there no funny, embarrassing story that stands out that you can share? I mean, there's one that's embarrassing for Dottie. We used to tell her, like, she could fly if she ate these lead pellets.
That's not embarrassing for me, but it was really funny.
Yeah. She would tell my aunt is 2 years younger, that if she ate, there's lead pellets, like weights.
The little weights. We had a little scale with little weights.
And they're made out of lead.
Well, whatever, they're metal of some sort. Yeah.
And she told my aunt if she ate them, she could fly.
And she believed it, yeah.
Did she eat them?
No.
She almost ate them.
No, but I mean, she would have.
Yeah. Oh, my God. Anyway.
Somebody probably saved her, but not me.
I don't know if I'm going to have an opportunity to record a conversation like this with us again. Because, I mean, maybe we will one day, but I want to make sure if there's anything that you want to share, anything I haven't asked you that you want to share, or anything that you would that I should know or the audience should know about yourself, share. Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of little nooks and crannies in our lives. I mean, I could go back but I think the interesting thing probably would be, the historical aspects of our family.
Mm-hmm. On both sides. Well, for me, on both sides.
For you on both sides, yeah. Because not all that number of years ago, well, just to know that I met Amy, about 20 years ago. But we were invited down to Washington, D.C.
Amy's my cousin on my grandfather's side, my maternal grandfather's side.
Right. Actually, her grandfather is my uncle.
Okay.
Yeah. So we were invited for a very interesting session, but one of the things, it was a marker that was put in Virginia for B.K. Bruce. But all I want to mention is that his painting hangs in Congress Hall.
Really?
Yeah.
Was that in affiliation with Howard University, the marker?
The marker, no. There's a lot of information at Howard University on the family, but the marker was, I'm not exactly sure who started it. It might have been Ron, my brother.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
Especially when you start reading, there's a lot of documentation, reading about the things they've done.
Yeah. And it's interesting on Bubba's side, on my dad's side, we've done a family tree that dates 700 years plus back.
Wow.
And it goes back to like Persian emperors, and because I guess we're considered royalty, they married other royalty in different, like I think Georgian or other surrounding countries. It was really fascinating. Mm-hmm. I guess it makes kind of a proud story to tell. All right, so the last segment of this interview series is 5 rapid fire questions. Very easy. Don't overthink it. You're going to overthink it, I know, but don't overthink it.
I think too much sometimes. You're right.
Sometimes, yeah. So just answer the first thing that comes to mind. Okay? What's your favorite city other than New York City?
Paris.
I knew you were going to say that. Other than nostalgia, is there any other reason?
No, I just that it's so beautiful.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I'm thinking about spending a few months there if I can.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just the environment physically. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. If you could do any other profession, what would you do?
Carpenter.
Really? I know you do a lot of work, your own housework, not meaning like cleaning up, but the actual fixing things and building things.
I love building.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I knew that, but I didn't realize you'd want to do that. I thought maybe, like I said, it isn't art, but art, like painting, drawing. I thought that you'd want to do that. What is your vice?
I know you said to answer very quickly, but sometimes I'm impatient.
Impatient?
With people.
Is that a vice?
I don't know. To me, I think it is. I need to be kinder.
I mean, but vice is something you kind of, meaning my interpretation would be something you...
Like drinking or smoking, things like that?
It doesn't have to be drinking or smoking, but I'd say, if I had to guess with you, like chocolate or sweets or something like that.
But that's not a vice.
Sure. It's something more like that. But, no.
Again, I think...
Impatience?
I think being a little bit more understanding, patient when it comes to people that annoy me. Like my sister.
But she annoys you because she doesn't do things the way you would like her to do to help herself.
She doesn't help herself. Yeah,
right.
Exactly. So that's what I mean. I need to be more patient.
Yeah. What is your greatest fear?
I guess it's not a fear so much. It's not a fear so much, but hoping that when I go, whenever that is, that I will have done all I would be afraid to go and not have a chance to.
Regret is your biggest fear.
I guess it's regret.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. To regret not having done something, not having taken care of something, not having, just to be prepared, because I tend to like to be prepared.
As far as the actual things that have to take place once you've passed, you're saying?
No, I mean, whatever, life. I mean, whatever I leave for you, not even leaving, but just have things and for myself, to have done all the things I want to do, to have accomplished what I want to accomplish.
That's a good fear. I mean,
it's a motivation.
Yeah. All right. And the last question is, what is your favorite food? And I know when we said she's an overthinker, do you know how long? I was telling her, bring your favorite food. We tell every guest to bring their favorite food. And it was an hour conversation almost, or the time to decide, back and forth. I don't have a favorite food. Just choose something. So we'll go over you have a ton of favorite foods, so you can mention a bunch of them. What is your favorite?
Okay. Well, should I give you what I brought? Because I brought something
I got
for
a knife
you too.
To cut it open if I need to.
Okay. So there's two of them. I don't know which one is yours, but I got you salad because I love salad. I really
salad
do.
with veggies in general. I know that was what you said.
Yeah,
right?
I have to say I've always liked vegetables.
This is mine.
Very much so.
Yeah.
As a child, my sister loved meat, and so it was great because she would give me whatever vegetable she didn't want to eat, and I'd pass the meat. So it stayed, it's always. But just overall, I like exotic foods. And that's why I couldn't pick a particular one because...
Can you name some cultural?
I love sushi, for example.
Yeah.
I love sushi. I love Persian food.
What's your favorite Persian food?
Khorme sabzi with tadik.
Okay.
Kashke badam jun.
Yeah. And what other foods?
Other foods, I like Thai food. I like Vietnamese food.
That's funny because not our French, I say mammy, specifically my grandmother, doesn't like any of that stuff.
I know. Yeah. And she's funny as
but
a French.
She's got great French food tastes, I think.
She likes French food. To be honest with you, I mean, French food's okay, but if I had a choice, that wouldn't be my last meal. Let's put it this way.
I think for me, it'd be Persian food, hands down.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I love Persian food.
Canard confit. I love certain French
don't like
dishes.
canard
I love canard confit. I love crêpe. I love...
I can't say I love them. I like them. They're okay. Yeah. I'll eat them. I'm happy to eat good French food, but I would much prefer something that has spices to it than, which French food does not usually.
No. It's based on good quality, simple ingredients.
Yeah.
And a lot of butter.
And cream, yeah.
Is there anything else you want to discuss or anything?
No.
Well,
I can't think of anything else. Is there anything you want to know?
No, I know.
That I haven't said?
I mean, there's tons of stuff, I'm sure, but nothing off the bat based on the conversation we had. I know a lot of it was more geared towards your time in Iran, being more of the historical significance. Mm-hmm. But no, I mean, I'll be sure to ask, and if there's anything that we missed that we feel like we want, I'm sure we'll have people. This is an interesting story, asking questions, and maybe we'll have you back on for some sort of panel, or we'll do something again if it calls for it.
Yeah.
Other than that, today's not Mother's Day, but this will be released on Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
I love you, Mom.
I love you, my Jeremy.
And thank you for sharing your story. Hopefully it's inspiring for people, I'm sure, somehow. So. And
just in case Matthew, Erica, Sydney, and Alex are going to watch this, I love you too, guys.
Yes, the kids. But thank you guys for watching part of my story, my mom's story, and feel free to ask questions if you have any. Otherwise, stay tuned for the next episode.